So for people in the room, yeah, in order to hear properly, you'll need the headphones. So, welcome, good afternoon. Welcome to this, which is the final panel session here of the day at the Standards Pavilion, and in fact, the final panel session at this pavilion at COP29. So, I'm very pleased to see you here in the afternoon. Thanks for staying on. My name's Ian Dunmill. I represent the International Organization of Legal Metrology, or OIML, which is an intergovernmental treaty organization based in Paris, which develops harmonized technical regulations concerning measuring instruments. Traditionally, most of our work is on instruments that are concerned with trade measurements, because trade is one of the oldest regulated areas worldwide. Most countries have regulations on trade measurement dating back many centuries in some cases. And as a result of that, it's one of the areas of life that people don't actually think about. It's something that the measurements are so integrated into the way our societies work that you probably don't think about the regulation behind the measuring instruments you use all the time, weighing instruments and so on. But these days, legal metrology has expanded beyond just the trade area, and one of the areas which we're concerned about are measurements used in transport. So that's the theme of this session. How does metrology or measurement support a sustainable future for transport? Basically with the energy transition which is going on at the moment, there is a need for standardization and regulation in completely new fields of measurement to us, such as electric vehicle charging, the measurement of hydrogen, which is used in vehicles as well. And the standards and regulations will be there not just to make sure of the efficiency and accuracy of the measuring instruments, but also for safety and other regulatory needs that there might be, satisfying climate change regulations and so on. So I'm going to ask our panelists to explore what initiatives are currently in place in this field, mainly from the measurement perspective, but measurement and standardization, to enable efficient and more sustainable transport options in the future, so as to reduce carbon emissions. So before asking them about this important subject, which, as I said, it concerns every one of us, unless we're sitting at home all the time, we all have to move somewhere in our professional and personal lives, so the transport options are very important to us. First of all, I've got to introduce you to the high-level panel which we have this afternoon. We have 4 speakers. Firstly, Mr. Christoph Winterhaller, who is CEO of DIN, the German Standards Organization, so welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Khamis Seyranov, Director General of the Azerbaijan Metrology Institute here in Baku. Mr. Ihsan Ovut, hope I've got the pronunciation right, from he's the Secretary General of the Standards and Metrology Institute for Islamic Countries based in Turkey. And Mr. Anthony Donnellan, who is Director of the OIML Secretariat, the same organization as I work for, based in Paris. So throughout the session, I'd like to encourage any of you in the audience, if you have questions, please, we'll give you a chance to ask questions. We'd like to make it as interactive as possible, so please do take advantage of the experts that we have here today to find out the answers to your questions and find out their views on those subjects. So in the summary, which you'll have seen on this session, we had 3 points, but I'd really like to take the first 2 of those together, first of all. So if I could start with Christoph, can you tell us something about what measurement standards and technical regulations are currently in place concerning vehicles and transport systems, and what new areas of emerging technology and so on are you concerned with, and what are your members asking for in that field? Thanks.
How many hours do I have to explain what kind of standards do exist?
In 10 minutes.
Well, I think what's very important is that in 2021, ISO decided to revise certain standards that would have a big impact on the climate. So to make transportation more sustainable, it's about analyzing which standards are actually can make a difference if we revise those standards and take climate consideration into our aspect when we change the standard. That is for automotive standards, it's for aviation, it's about what kind of data are we collecting. It's all about measurement. It's all about measurement. So what do we need to measure? What are the relevant targets? And what targets are used today? And where do we have to modify them in order to cope with the target to limit climate change? So it's a variety of standards that are under revision right now to really make a difference. And at the same time, since it's about collecting data, there'll be additional standards being used where to store those data and how to provide access to those data. But I think I stop here, otherwise I dive too deep into kind of data container standards.
Okay, thanks. It's very interesting there that you're covering also the fact that aviation, for example, is included, whereas I think possibly many people are thinking in this particular instance about road transport, vehicle, personal cars, buses and so on. So it's important to show that, there's a lot of concern about standards also in the aviation.
And shipping
field.
as well.
And shipping, yes. So, if I could just move on then to Mr. Sarianov from the Metrology Institute here, can you give us what is your sort of national viewpoint on this? What kind of actions are happening in Azerbaijan in this field?
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you very much for giving a chance and opportunity to talk about this chapter. So that, of course, as you know, the metrology is the science of measurement, and of course, plays the crucial role in the. That's okay. Okay. And metrology plays the crucial role in the implementation of the legal normative business, so that as standards. So that regarding in the metrology, of course, covers. Okay, metrology covers all sides of the life and economical fields, and including transportation. This is also regulated in our legislation, and there is several requirements regarding measurement in the transportation types, so that the various types of transportation systems, including electric vehicles, hydrogen-powered vehicles, hydrocarbon metering, and vehicle emissions are increasingly important today's world. That's why we need to set up legal requirements to measuring their emissions, because of the protection of the environment and environmental issues. Of course, such measurements aren't only technologically and economically important, but also play the crucial role in terms of environmental protection and social responsibility. According to our domestic legislation, the law of Azerbaijan Republic on ensuring the unity of measurements, the state regulation is applied to measurement on environmental protection. Regarding this requirement of law, according to the with the list of measuring instruments verified by accredited bodies in the field of ensuring the informity of measurements, which is approved by the Cabinet of Ministers, the number of the 393. There's shown that during the state technical inspection of cars by the state traffic police, legal and physical persons of means of measuring the concentration of gases and smoke and the noise level of vehicles used when servicing car at service station have to be verified. This is our the main requirements of our domestic legislation. Which type of measuring should be happened or they verified according to legislation below? Measurement of gas volume consumption, measurement of the amount of carbon monoxide in the export gases and of gasoline-powered motor vehicles, measurement of the amount of carbon dioxide in the export gases of gasoline-powered motor vehicles, and measurement of nitrogen oxide content in the export gases of gasoline-powered motor vehicles. Regarding that, Azerbaijan Metrology Institute, according to its obligations and functions, doing calibration and verification through the measurement units. For example, in this year, so that 2024, Azerbaijan Metrology Institute calibrated the 249 gas analyzers, which used mainly in the traffic police, state traffic police, and 88 opacity, which also used to smoke opacity and of the vehicle's exhaust. These analyzers are used to measure various components in exhaust gases, including carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and hydrocarbons, and smoke opacity. So that by the mean, our legislation covered several parts of the verification of the measurement instruments which they used in the calibration and verification of the vehicles, also determining the smoke and these oxides.
Okay. Thank you. I think that gives you quite a good idea of the amount of detail that's involved in legislating for the instruments that are concerned in this kind of field. So it's very interesting to hear it as a national, the way that the implementation has happened on a national basis. To move on to Mr. Ovut, the membership of your organization is quite varied. You've got some very diverse countries across the world. It's stretching right around the world, I think. What is important to those members about this sort of energy transition and transport? And do you have different sort of needs from those different countries? If you could tell us a little bit about that, please.
Thank you very much. I also want to give chance to us to be with you today. It's hearing well. Okay. As you said, the CIMIC is we have 48 members. It's from Africa to Asia. We have members in America also, like Suriname. In CIMIC, we have normally we are developing standards as a regional organization, but we are Standards and Metrology Institute. We have the second part of our name is the Metrology Institute for Islamic countries. We have a Metrology Council, is composed of all national metrology authorities from these members. For example, the ASMI also a member of the council, and Malaysia is Saudi Arabia, Emirates, in Turkey, OIML, a member of OIML, they are active there. Beyond our technical enhance the technical capabilities and harmonious standards aligned with the international recommendation. They are following the OIML rules recommendation. In CIMIC Metric Council plays a vital role for driving these efforts, contributing the removal of technical barriers to trade and promoting best practices in metrology within the OIC region. There are policies like this. By fostering regional cooperation, CIMIC Metric Council support the development of more sustainable transport system in line with the global goals and reduce carbon footprints. In the transportation sector, legal metrology is, as well known, ensure the accurate, reliable and fair measurements which are crucial for trade, safety and environmental protection. Instruments like fuel dispensers, vehicle weighing system and emission monitoring devices are regulated by international standards, such as those developed by the OIML. These standards help member states of the CIMIC harmonize their practices and meet global requirements. For example, the fuel pumps must adhere to standards, ensuring the correct quantity is dispensed, while truck weighing system prevent overloading, contributing the road safety and reduce emissions. Emission testing devices play a crucial role in regulating pollutants like carbon dioxide and nitrogen oxides, ensure vehicles meet the environment standards. With the rise of the electric vehicles, the accuracy of energy meters are changing. Charging station is becoming essential for fair billing and monitoring energy use. Area CIMIC MC Magic Council offer CIMIC guidance and capacity building initiatives. We are bringing the all, as we all know, then we have three categories. Some of us is very qualified in the European. When you compare with the Europe, have a lot of comparison tests, etc. But majority is very, very least developed countries in Africa, in Asia countries, Pakistan also not so high qualified. But we combine all of them, and sometimes we give a lot of training and training based on the OIML and other international organizations which we are actively participate.
Thank you. I think that's brought out an interesting aspect which is important. The international rules which are set, the standards which are set, the recommendations from the OIML at the international level, and we heard a bit about how they're implemented nationally, but there's also a very important role at a regional level as well. And one of the big benefits which we find in this area and in other areas for the regional activities are specifically the training that was mentioned at the end. It's often very much better to organize training events on a regional basis because you get a better exchange of countries with similar problems, with similar environmental situations and so on. So it's a very good thing to point out that training can happen at the regional level. Thank you. I'd just like to ask Anthony now, can you give a sort of legal metrology or international legal metrology perspective on the subject, please?
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today with members of you. No good? It's okay? Sound okay?
Oh, it does.
Sounds better. Okay. I was just mentioning that it's a pleasure to be here today with everyone in the audience and everyone listening and participating online as well.
Have you still got
handheld?
Yeah. It's breaking up a bit on that signal.
No problem. Okay. Better now? Okay. Thank you everyone for participating and listening to a number of the comments on the panel today. It's been really enlightening in terms of the work we do. It's a pleasure for the OIML to be here as well at COP29 to elevate not only the profile of metrology in its various forms across the board, but also to participate in the standards pavilion, which is critical as we move to the actualization and putting in place a number of metrics for delivering on some of the commitments at COP, and we move into a new phase there. So we like to think that metrology, and particular legal metrology in our organisation, the OIML, plays a key role in that energy transition. Two aspects of that I would mention is that we do have a number of standards which are focused on the future, which are focused on new technologies. So, for example, electric vehicle charging systems, hydrogen, fuel systems, ethanol blended systems, and measuring those. But we also have existing standards which play a key role here, and a part of that role is also looking at areas including carbon accounting, a proper an accurate use of measurements as part of greenhouse gas emissions and emissions trading systems. And all of those systems rely on a standard or at least accurate measurement as part of that process. So we like to think in the OIML that we are certainly contributing to that. The OIML itself has a number of different standards in that area, and as I mentioned, there's some focused on vehicle emissions. There are some focused on electric vehicle charging stations and new technologies like hydrogen fuel systems in terms of that area. But we are also very responsive to the needs of our members and our member states and what's happening at a national level. So I agree, it's really important that we hear on the ground in terms of what's happening within Azerbaijan and all our members and non-members as well, but also on a regional level, and so that information cascades up from a bottom-up approach and through participation in OIML technical committees and through our broader apparatus that's out there. The true needs of members, both from a regulatory point of view, but as we move into an energy transition for the future, is critically important. The last point I'd make here as well is, it was touched on before as well, and earlier today I was participating in a World Bank session on electric buses and their rollout across the world, particularly with a focus on some of the Americas, some of the American countries in the Americas. And it was interesting to note that some of the opening remarks made there was that 1/4 of greenhouse gas emissions comes from transport. So we thought it very fitting that today we actually have a session on transport, the role of standards and metrology in terms of its contribution to setting the standards for lowering those emissions, and for the existing emissions which are in place accurately capturing those from an accounting point of view and measuring those for where it's needed from an audit point of view and reporting point of view. So yes, certainly it's really pleasing to hear from all of the members of the panel here, both the interaction and the interplay at a national, regional and international level, and the need for strong, trusted, accurate measurement standards.
Thank you. I think that's given a couple of important words there, especially the trust and the measurements, which is a problem in trade, but it's also a problem in people's confidence in environmental measurements and so on. Christoph, I think you'd like to add something.
I'm a lucky person. I'm sitting on a panel of metrology experts just being a standardizer. But I mean, this is a standards pavilion, and it's all about collaboration. It's collaboration between standards organizations in different countries. It's about collaborating between standard setting organizations in one country. And it's most important, the collaboration along the quality infrastructure. And it starts with metrology. I mean, without these guys, without understanding how to measure things, standards are worth very little. So it's really about the connection of the metrology, which is mainly organized kind of by the governments. There's clear rules set, how do you need to measure, what is mandatory, and then you have the private sector standards that pick up on these metrology kind of concepts and turn it into something that can be implemented by companies. But the most important piece comes then, that's conformity assessment, to make sure that it's applied correctly. And I think we can make a difference if we're expanding the definition of quality that we have today by looking at carbon intensity, looking at sustainability as another aspect, which means we have to get that implemented throughout the whole quality infrastructure. So we need to understand what to measure on the metrology side, how to incorporate that in existing standards, and how to enable the conformity assessment bodies to test and verify the sustainability information that we're collecting throughout the value chain. So it's very important that we're talking about metrology, but we're talking about the whole quality infrastructure, and it's always a public-private partnership. Since I was answering as an ISO vice president, but I mean, here it says DIN, so I mean, being a German, I mean, it's very important that it's this public-private partnership. Metrology is the government. DIN standards is private. Accreditation is the government. Conformity assessment in terms of certification is a private task. And then it comes to market surveillance to verify that all these labels are actually doing what they are promising. It's another governmental responsibility. So it's like a very interconnected public-private partnership that works very well, and we need to transform that quality infrastructure into a system that helps us to measure and to steer us towards a more sustainable future.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's very important to show this, the importance of the quality infrastructure as a whole, that countries have a quality policy that integrates those different functions that are covered across frequently different ministries of government. So there's a coordination issue at the national level as well there. It's often said that the four main pillars of the quality infrastructure, metrology, accreditation, standardization and conformity assessment, but as you said, you can set a standard, but if you can't make a measurement to say whether you comply with the standard or not, then the standard doesn't serve a purpose. So the metrology to some extent is like the floor on which the pillars are built, as much as being a separate pillar in itself. Just before, computer would turn off just when I want to see my note again, wouldn't it? I'd like to see whether there are any questions from you in the audience. Just one, sorry, yes, carry on. If you need the microphone from somewhere.
Thank you for your valuable information. Sanubar from Azerbaijan, with the background both in standardization and metrology. I have a question that what are the key challenges in establishing globally consistent measurement standards for assessing transport emissions and efficiency for uniformity within these both areas? Mm-hmm. What are the key challenges?
Swap microphones again. It's a key challenge both in emissions, but and monitoring and standards and metrology more generally across the board to get that consistency. One of the key messages that we give on a regular basis is that metrology facilitates trade. So it reduces the technical barriers to trade and creates a level playing field in terms of both what companies and businesses should expect, which is really important in terms of their bottom line and how they can create the instruments, because they are the manufacturers in the workplace. But also that governments have consistency in measurement and reporting. So I think part of that is, as an international organisation like ourselves, it's critically important that the standards that we develop are reflective of the needs within member states across the board. So we operate on a very decentralised, democratised process in terms of establishing our standards. So we invite members to participate, contribute their national expertise, whether there are regional components that need to come into play. And then we develop that international standards through consensus building and through the convening power of an international organisation. Through that process, we hopefully capture all of the elements, but that's not to say that standard is then set in stone and that technical regulation is set and forget. It is revised, it is updated as technology evolves, as practices evolve, as regulatory expectations evolve. And there is often different rulemaking, different arrangements that come out of multilateral fora, like the one we're sitting in at the moment, which require different elements to be measured and captured and reported upon. So we try and reflect that in our standards. But the real challenge, and getting to your question in particular, is how do we get harmonisation in the implementation? We do encourage all members to use our standards, and in fact even members who are at different levels, and indeed even countries who are not members, to use our standards. And the critical importance of that is consistency across the board. So we do monitor that, we do encourage people to report on the uptake and implementation of the standards, and also to upgrade. So we often find that economies and members use earlier versions of standards, coming back to what we were talking about in terms of the quality infrastructure and conformity assessment, in particular in conformity assessment, that older versions are used. So we encourage them to update when we update. But it is a challenge. It is something we continue to remind members about, member states and all countries in the world, that standardization and harmonization effectively makes everyone's life easier at the end of the day. Thank you. Always room for improvement, though.
Would the rest of you like to say something on?
Yep. Thank you very much for your question, and it's okay, voice. Yep. Just adding some words to the statement of their dynamo. So that, of course, the collaboration of within these fields is very important, because if the standards comes from or the standards shown as the legal requirements accepted or approved by the governmental bodies or the international organizations, but it's implemented by the metrology or the measuring, because in the measuring process it's clear that if it's work or not, or which techniques should be changed, which parts of standards should be improved or should be changed into new specification, so that each parts of this quality infrastructures as very important, and I agree with their guests' statements that this is works together. It's very important with each others.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other points from the panel on this, or do we? No, we can carry on. Before we go on and ask some other questions, I notice that we have one of the ISO's youth delegates to COP29 who's here, Aisha. Sorry, I can't remember what your surname is. I know you've got a particular interest in hydrogen's role in the energy transition generally. So I just wondered whether you could say something about that, please.
Yeah, hello everyone. It's Aisha. I'm one of the ISO youth delegates here. What I would like to say about hydrogen and in general hydrogen in mobility is you evaluate this from a standards perspective, but I would like to evaluate a little bit this from also engineering perspective. While we are trying to decarbonize the mobilization transport sector in general, what we do is right now going for electrical cars, hydrogen cars, and also trying to reduce the emission by this. But why we are start to talk about hydrogen cars also is because refueling time for EV cars are actually much more than the hydrogen cars. So you can just refuel a hydrogen cars in a couple of minutes maybe, but then you should wait half hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, depends on your battery for an EV car. In practical matters, this is also changing. But why not we are not using right now hydrogen cars is obviously the cost. But always new technologies are coming with a high cost. And what I am seeing right now, I am doing my master degree in Netherlands. What I am seeing right now, more project about hydrogen production, making it more cheaper, importing it, and making much more available battery systems, hydrogen production areas, electrolyzers and cracking units for ammonia also. So this is really great to see, and this is one of the things that maybe we can reduce emissions. And also, what I am thinking about, while we are electrolyzing the mobility sector, when we plug in, we still have some emissions because these electricity coming from somewhere. And this hydrogen also coming from somewhere. You can also produce hydrogen with natural gas. Why is the standardization is important? Is here that to understand whole supply chain, where is this electricity coming from and where is this hydrogen coming from? Did you verify it? Did you measure the emissions? So this is I am thinking that it is really important, and we need a standardization in this area because as far as I see, everyone actually would like to do something about this, but like you said, harmonization and standardization of the standards, it helps all of us. Otherwise, there are lots of standards, lots of certification systems with other scopes that we don't understand. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's highlighted another point that we've talked about having standards for the instruments, for vehicles, for the construction and so on, but it's important that, as you just said, we look at the whole cycle involved here. It's all very well to say, well, they're electric, they're green, but to look at that whole product cycle, where's the electricity coming from, how's it generated and so on. Which, does anybody else have any particular questions at the moment? Because the other item which we wanted to cover really was a bit about carbon accounting. So that then leads into the fact that, yes, in transport we can improve the efficiency of the vehicles, we can improve the standardization of that area, but if you're not looking at the carbon accounting for the whole life cycle, the whole process, then you're missing points out. So, yes.
Can I try to respond?
Please do.
I think we need all these technologies. We need electrification, but we also need hydrogen to have the heavy vehicles efficiently decarbonized. But it's a question of the infrastructure. We need to build a charging infrastructure as well for the kind of charging of electric vehicles, as well as a hydrogen infrastructure that actually makes a safe charging for hydrogen possible. But you said correctly, we want to verify that the hydrogen that we're putting in the car or in the truck is actually green. And everybody talks about green hydrogen. The question is, what is green and how green is it? That's why we need to have clear measurement principles. We need to have harmonization of the standards that would actually measure the carbon intensity of the hydrogen when you charge, not how it's produced, because it includes transport and includes losses. So you'll have carbon intensity levels, and they need to be harmonized. They need to be standardized. And of course, you need to be able to measure along the value chain of hydrogen. I mean, there's a lot of conversion where there's losses. That needs to be taken into consideration. So then you need standards for that. But you need to store the data. Because, I mean, if you charge hydrogen, there's no label on the hydrogen. There's no color on the hydrogen. But we need to have that information. The consumer wants to have that information. We want to have information to make investment decisions. And that's why the infrastructure where we actually store those data is very important. I mean, we could dive into that topic.
Yes.
So how we can actually, besides the measurement principles and to secure the quality infrastructure, how we can do that in a digital environment. Because it's all about reporting. Reporting means transparency, everybody getting access to these data. It's not just that you have a certificate. You want to be able to compare things. And that means we need to have a cloud infrastructure where these data are stored in a safe way with a clear definition. Who has access to those data, who can actually write these data into what we call a digital product passport. The project actually started in the electrification of vehicles. You need a battery passport because you want to know what happens to that battery. Can it be reused? I mean, what is the capacity of the battery? How has it been produced? How much carbon has been emitted during the production of this battery? I mean, that is now mandatory in the European Union that we're working on this battery passport. But we need a generic concept, what we call a generic product passport, that enables us to have all these information stored in a similar way, in a transparent way, which is a lot of standardization activities on one side, and we need to think data, not only products. So whenever we develop products, we need to think about what are the relevant data and how do we store these data in the product passport? Because that will make reporting requirements be much easier to be implemented because there is a direct kind of access to the information because it's on the internet. So to go digital with the quality infrastructure is one of the biggest challenges and one of the single biggest projects that we're having in standardization as well as in kind of evolving the digital quality infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you. I think that quite clearly goes into the other question which we're going to be asking about measurement standards in carbon accounting and how this can be put in place in the future, and exactly it's the data.
And also, I think it should be also take account that these fields are very newly fields and the growth fields. That it's also new for the metrology, for the measurement. And Mr. Christoph says that it is who knows if it's green or not. It would also depends on the measuring and data of measuring. But for the in purpose of the measuring, this is as I said, this is a new field for the metrology and also legal metrology. We had to also develop, create measuring techniques. How could we measure and what we measure? This is also important, and this is also new for our fields.
And so is that something that you're developing at the national level in Azerbaijan?
Of course, it will depends on how infrastructure the setup for the for example, like gasoline station, hydrogen station, electrical pulling station, and how infrastructure will be set up our country. We will do care of it to measure the vehicles.
And so, Mr. Overt, do you have amongst your members work which is going on to do with carbon accounting and emission controls at an industrial level or in transport? Is there something more you can add from the regional point on that, please?
Thank you very much again. Specifically, I cannot say about the automotive sector, and we are on the vehicle because the problem is everywhere the same. When we met metrology experts, they're raising same issues, same thing is saying. Now we are majority from standards bodies, maybe His Excellency, you are from metrology. We are listening. For example, not only issues, today we are talking about automotive. We have many equipment, medical equipment in hospital, many thousands equipment are using. All are. As they said, if you want to sick, doctor give a medicine for your carrying your illness. But each medicine bring another things to you. Not 100 just for this illness. Extra something, maybe in the nervous, you make you nervous, and etc. Electrical cars not only bring with full green and nothing harms to us. Then many things can be dangerous for our other issues. Other bring small, not like fuel at fossil fuel, but at least they have some extra gain to us. But back to our Metrology Council, we bring all people together and listen and exchange information and make capacity building. Now we are working on the medical devices, metrology on medical devices, test methods, etc. They are the standards, and maybe OIML has or Euromet has something, etc. There's a committee working on this. We have a lot of comparison testing between the countries from Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Malaysia. We are sending the samples between our labs, metrologic labs. Majority we are talking about policy and general issues. I cannot say we are only physically, technically, because the platform is our platform, not international organization. Under us is a council, as a chair, vice chair, etc. But all issues are discussing all years. I can say summarize like this.
Thank you. I think that's mentioned another concept that's really valuable in the metrology field. Apart from traceability, which is obviously needed to make sure that each measurement really is correct and there's a full traceability back to the SI system, the intercomparability of results and intercomparison testing is something else which is also very important, especially at a regional level, because it's usually a lot easier for countries within a region to do that intercomparison work. So, Anthony, can you say anything about how legal metrology is dealing with these kind of new fields like carbon accounting? Is it a regulated area, or is something needed, or what, please?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
No. The microphone. I'm not sure. Where's it gone? We lost the microphone. Thanks.
Very much. Thank you, Ian, as well. I guess in terms of ESG reporting, there's more and more requirements on enterprises, both in the private sector, public sector organisations, and so on, in terms of ESG reporting, or as was previously known, triple bottom line reporting, that type of thing. So as part of that, in terms of measuring carbon emissions and accounting for it, it comes back to the concept that we were talking about earlier, trust and standardization. And if we have a method, both in documentary standards, but we also have physical standards where that intercomparability can take place, with that traceability chain and with that trusted mechanism, this is why it's so important here of the interplay between the quality infrastructure. Because the laboratories that do the testing in terms of the instruments, when the initial verification takes place, when the subsequent verification takes place, those verifications and that calibration is done through laboratories who are accredited, whether it be under ISO 17025 and other mechanisms. So really building that trust through the traceability chain, which ends in the end result. Can you trust the measurements of greenhouse gas emissions and running your vehicle fleet, for example? And the answer should be yes. And because of that traceability chain. In terms of the digitalization of that whole process, that's critically important as well, so that different actors can make an intervention and cross-check the calibrations, the verifications at different points of intervention. And those different points of intervention are different for different people. So regulators will want to intervene at a certain point and see what the compliance levels are. Enterprises will want to access that information in terms of their own reporting and potential financial obligations within their own jurisdictions and within their own sovereign boundaries, but increasingly transnational sovereign boundaries. The other aspect of the digital side of things as well is when things go wrong. And we hope they don't, and we try and put the mechanisms in place that they don't, but they do. So the other side of metrology is the legal and compliance side. And we're called the Organisation for Legal Metrology for a reason. So when things go wrong, governments need trusted standards, trusted methods, trusted calibration to accurately put cases forward where things do go wrong and people need to be prosecuted or otherwise, or there is a dispute, be it trade or whether there is a claim dispute in terms of how green their actual credentials are. So I think as long as there is traceability back through a certification system, through conformity assessment, using all aspects of the quality infrastructure, so standardization, accreditation through our friends with ILAC and IAF, and ultimately using metrology and having that cascade down at a national level. Because ultimately at a national level, really this is where these activities, in terms of if things do go wrong, where they are ultimately prosecuted. So I think supporting it, underpinning it, metrology standards and standards more generally play a really critical role.
Thank you. I think that's it's interesting, this digitalization. It's a word that you hear at so many different kinds of events. Doesn't seem to matter which organization. They're all concerned with the process of digitalization, smart documents, digital product passports, as you just mentioned. And within the metrology community, there's a lot of concentration on digital calibration certificates for instruments so that they can prove the traceability of those instruments. But I think from a legal metrology point of view, we have a digitalization task group which is looking at how digitalization can affect legal metrology and what kind of things we should be putting into place. But it comes down to what you were saying about digital passports. You mentioned it particularly with batteries. You need to know the history of a battery in a vehicle. How many times has it been recharged? Has it been recycled, etc., etc. But also from each measuring instrument's point of view that's covered by legal metrology regulations, you have when was the type approval done, how many times has it been verified, what was the last time it was verified, and so on. So there are many options and many things which could come out in the future, which will actually make a lot of this data more easily accessible to more people, more interchangeable with other organizations, other bodies, and so on. Yes.
But I think it's very important that we collect these data in a standardized way. Because if everybody collects the data on his premise, in his computer system, according to his structure, then we will have to create these reports. And that creates bureaucracy. So we want more disclosure standards. Everybody needs to kind of prove what he is kind of reporting, and he does it according to his methodology. And these kind of reporting requirements are getting huge. That's like with the disclosure reports that we have in Europe for sustainability reports. I mean, it's a tremendous kind of burden on small and medium-sized enterprises. If we would provide an infrastructure, and that's kind of what we're working on, that all the data, calibration data of a sensor, measurement values, who has actually certified the process, according to which standard has the measurement been applied, who has accredited the certification body, when was the last calibration procedure for the sensor. It's all in a cloud infrastructure. It's a data space, according to a data space standard that contains all that information. Then even the governments, they can do a monitor, go into that data space and grab the data. No company creates a report and sends it to its government, and then there comes another request for an additional report. I mean, that doesn't work. If we really want to be transparent when it comes to sustainability, it means more reporting. More reporting becomes a problem if we implement it with bureaucracy. If we have a data infrastructure according to international standards, how to store these data and how to provide access to a government, you can skip the reporting and you're fully transparent. I think that is the enabling factor that we can do with adding this IT dimension. But then, of course, you have to be cyber secure. You have to make sure that nobody has manipulated these data. But then we have standards as well. But it's important that we are brave enough to go digital, because I mean, to go green, to go sustainable, without using the potential of the digital transformation that gives us all the goodies like AI that we can optimize and analyze and compare, but it needs to be available in a standardized digital format. That's why this is so important of a project for the whole quality infrastructure.
I think you're very right, and that again raises the question of trust in the data that you're getting. And from our field, even we've heard from some of our more, the countries which have more emerging metrology systems, they're not fully in place yet. There's still an interest in pursuing that bureaucratic side, if you like, of things, the reporting side and so on, just because it has the knock-on effect, because of the transparency, the ability of governments to go directly into the data. It does help in eliminating corruption. It's better than a paper-based system where there's an option for someone to pay for a certain result and so on. If the instruments are directly reporting their information, it's available in a transparent way to governments and other concerned shareholders, stakeholders in the system, then it does has this benefit of reducing the corruption, which of course long-term reduce costs to the industry, but also to the society as a whole. So it's another very important issue to do with the trust. Does anybody else in the audience have any questions on this sort of side? Can't see any points there. Yes, Mr. Ovid.
As Dean DG has said, quality infrastructure, everything is there. Because the 4 legs, as we say, standards, metrology, accreditation, and conformity assessment. In the CIMIC, approximately 4 years ago, CIMIC published a quality infrastructure, but only for the halal sector. There's a new info for you, maybe, because the halal sector is a new, very growing, quick growing the sector. Halal products look in the market, because many countries don't want to do products without halal views checked by halal experts. That is, we publish a quality info for halal, global halal quality fund for halal quality infrastructure. Like this, metrology is one of them. After that, our Metrology Council is forced to develop reference materials and certified reference materials, including them for the halal industry. What they are doing, I can say, they are using all international practices and requirements, recommendation, and plus what can we do with insurance as one of them is corruption. So corruption is in Islam is fully forbidden. If anyone corrupted cannot be Muslim. Yeah, he can pray everything good, but corrupted is forbidden by God. Not only corrupted, who is corrupting him also is cannot be Muslim. In Holy Book says that reason one of them is include these ethic issues, plus technically we are following all international rules quality infrastructure rules and metrology rules. We are using like ISO standards, basic standards, and then what can we add as a reference? Plus, we can add something or not. Metrology is the same thing in our region. Just extra information to share with you.
It's important, I think, to add some of those other issues to it. Yes. We'll have to draw to a close soon, I think. But please do answer the question.
Just one small question to Mr. Winterhalter. You spoke about transparency in the reporting. Is there any good practice used in Germany which we can refer, or just we can take a lesson from this? Do you have any good practice for us? Thank you in advance.
Yes, I do. I mean, that's exactly what we call as a project called the Digital Product Passport. It's actually a standardization request by the European Commission to define a data space that can host these data with clear rules who can access the data, with a clear definition of what are the mandatory data that each product needs to put into that passport. So it's very important. It started, as I said, with the battery passport, which is in place. So every battery has to submit a set of data. But not only printed on the battery pack, it's actually coming with a virtual twin of the battery. And that battery information is stored on the internet. So it's mainly the supplier of the battery that starts a data set in the data space. And as the battery is kind of used, the information is updated. So you have an updated image of that digital twin. But the core information is really what usually is printed on the battery pack. Where is it manufactured, who manufactured it, down to what is the sensor that actually was utilized in the final verification step. So they can actually access that through that digital product passport. But it's really about a common data structure that is actually implemented by the supplier, but can be utilized and accessed throughout the whole supply chain, even for reporting purposes. So we are at the beginning, but the first kind of digital product passports are out there. And now it's about to generalize the principle and apply it across the board for all products.
Thank you. Do any of the other panelists have anything they want to say before we sum up a bit and summarize? Yep.
Thank you very much. Keeping it brief in relation to the sum up, really it's just as we embark on this energy transition, it's really important that the views of all economies and all participants, consumer groups, industry groups, manufacturers, governments, they're all heard. And in order for us to move forward in an inclusive way and therefore develop standards and, in our case, technical regulations from a metrology point of view are reflective of those needs, that those needs are heard. And they come up, they bubble up, and they come up through your national representatives and your industry groups, and they are put forward to those groups. So really, from my perspective, a last message is, make your voice heard, because that's how we make the standards better.
Thank you. Yeah. Unless anyone else has anything to add, I think I'd like to draw a close there. It is the time for the end of the session, even if we are the last, the final session, in more ways than one. So I hope that's given you a lot of things to think about measurement and about this field of transport. And maybe it's made you think a little bit about some of the measurements you probably don't notice. You go about your life, and some of these things are integrated so much into what you do, you don't think about the need for those measurements and the need for the regulation behind them. So if any of you want to ask further questions, I'm sure the people will not be racing off straight away, so please do feel free to approach them and ask any final questions. Like I said, I hope it's been interesting for you, and you can perhaps take the subject away in the back of your mind until perhaps we do some similar kind of event in the future, or maybe even at COP30 next year. So thank you all very much for coming today, and thank you very much to the panelists for their very stimulating discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.